Hi there, this is John Fairhurst with my review of John Cramer's Twistor, copyrighted 1989. The edition I'm reviewing is the New English Library 1991 edition. Unfortunately, they haven't actually credited cover artists, so if you know who designed the image at the start, please drop me a comment down below. I've included both the front and back cover of the book, as it doesn't really make sense if I just included the front cover. The story is set in the approximate present of the late 80s, or possibly a few years forward of the publication date. Cramer himself considers this hard science fiction, mainly on the grounds it doesn't involve space travel or ray guns. Cramer makes the common fault of projecting then current computer technology forward in a fashion that makes one smile now, though to be fair, he mentions a Macintosh 3, which I thought was just making an assumption, but apparently Apple did release a Mac 3, though this was well after the actual publication date of this story. The cast of characters is fairly stereotypical of this sort of story too. A cynical young physicist, David Harrison, who is working at Seattle University as Dr. Alan Saxon's postgrad assistant and is formerly of Los Alamos, which he'd left after getting fed up with the secrecy found surrounding his work there. Alan Saxon himself, who isn't at the head of the physics department, but sees him as a big name, big shot in the physics world. And when we are first introduced to him, he sounds as if he's going to be the villain of the novel. Victoria, otherwise known as Vicky Gordon, Saxon's graduate student, brilliant and pretty, and not looking for a relationship with anyone. Around the three protagonists, we have the Ernsts, Paul, who's a theoretical physicist at the university, Elizabeth Ernst, his wife and budding psychologist, Melissa and Jeff, their children aged 9 and 6 respectively, and William Flash Gordon, who was staying with Victoria after having had a run-in with the law after having been caught hacking back in California. Vicky's PhD project involved creating electromagnetic fields to read crystal structures using a tumbling electromagnetic field, which cues descriptions of electrical technology that would do Dr. Frankenstein's lab proud. Along with David, she's got the equipment to a point where they are able to see if it switches on without shorting. Yes, yay. There's no leaks in the cooling system, nothing major, and that it shows a sensible result when run without a sample. No? Oh. The problem. At various frequencies, the already practically perfect vacuum in the sample chamber dropped through the vacuum more commonly found in outer space, and charting these frequencies showed these anomalies occurring at regular intervals in the frequency bands. Further investigations show that at these frequencies, holes were being made in our reality, but going where? This is where Paul gets called in to see what he can contribute to the debate, particularly as David and Vicky have been experimenting with expanding the Twistor effect and had lost their original equipment. Well, David had, but had rebuilt the equipment with just the bits they needed for the Twistor effect, and under Paul's theoretical direction, they work out their holes were going into new universes hidden behind the weird mathematics of string theory, a biggish thing back then. At this point, we get a little buried under the theory and practicalities of experimental research. Also, Vicky is getting twitchy at this point. This isn't her PhD project after all, interesting as it might be, and time is ticking. And they still haven't informed Alan Saxon that his experiment has been proofed into an unknown universe. Meanwhile, Alan is in the National Science Funding gig and a meeting with a backer of his business venture, where he's already focusing thoughts on the spin-off deals with the holospin technology when he learns of the lost technology. and his short temper on the phone caught the interest of his investor, the dastardly Martin Pierce of Megalith Communications Group, who puts a sneaky plan into action. Alan goes off on one against David mainly when he gets back, mainly due to the pressure put on him by Megalith, but when they get into doing yet more scientific tests, he shows that he's still a decent experimentalist. And incidentally, does anyone else remember the time when the baud rates were measured in kilobits? Vicky's brother goes off on a rant about William Gibson's Neuromancer. No assumptions about technological improvements between there now and the limitations of the timeline of Neuromancer. Back to the lab, and David is falling in love with Vicky, and one session when he comes into the lab with a song flowing out of him, Vicky picks up a strange signal on her oscilloscope, and they find that they've been bugged. Immediately they think of Saxon and confront him, only to find his office had been bugged as well. This accelerates Saxon's intention to transfer the Twistor technology to his business lab, plans already known to those listening in. This leads to a confrontation between the goons and David as he prepares to move the technology on Saxon's timetable. Things go downhill when Melissa and Jeff choose this rather inauspicious time to come out of where they'd been hiding after sneaking away from watching their father. Experimental physics has much more spectacular surroundings compared to theoretical physics after all. In an attempt to put the tech beyond the thugs, David had rigged a twist to take it into a new universe. Unfortunately, the kids are in the field, and when he goes in to try and stop the twist from activating, he's too late, and it takes the three humans and the gear into a new universe. At first, David is concerned that this new universe consists of just a never-ending block of wood, but he reasons it out that the three humans and the remains of the lab were just stuck inside a supersized sequoia, and hopefully near the outer surface on one side. Using an abandoned battery-operated toolkit, David manages to create an opening to the outer world, and then from there, this strand of the story becomes a fairly standard let's explore our new world for a while anyway. Back on Earth Standard, the megalith baddies are in disarray, but their boss is now even more eager to get hold of the technology, and if the hardware itself was momentarily unavailable, there was still Dr. Saxon and Vicky's minds to be picked. The Doctor had done a good job in overselling his part in the discovery, and he's soon immured in a dank cellar. Well, not that dank, in truth, if we ignore all that kidnapping part. Of course, he doesn't know anywhere near as much as he'd made out, which leads to a rather more uncomfortable time than he really deserved. This section is pretty graphic, which is kind of interesting in its way, but is a rather stark change of tone. The goons try a final time to be less than totally evil, but after a final denial he knows anything about the Twistor effect, they inject Saxon with a serum that would destroy his ability to stop talking. Just a pity it also destroys his mind as well. Still with no useful answer though. Victoria, with the help of various other students around the university, though not the support of the university administration, has resolved to rebuild the Twistor yet again. Also, unbeknownst to herself, she's the last remaining target of for the megalith goons as they try to get more information on the missing device. The fact that one of these goons lost a hand during the raid on the lab led to a pretty nasty confrontation when she's kidnapped by them. Meanwhile, her brother is investigating Megalith's computer system pretty much against the terms of his parole for earlier offences, and he gets a visit from the goons searching for his sister that scares him into going on the run. But with no mobile phones, he can't warn her. So when she fails to turn up at a rendezvous, he makes a cautious contact with Paul and Elizabeth, and they work out how to best share the information with the authorities. Back on shifted Earth, David and the children are doing okay, though the kids are beginning to miss their parents, and as David continues telling them their weekly story of the adventures of Ton, he realises that although he might not have the equipment or power to run the full Twistor effect, he could build a small Twistor using the toolbox and bits of the bigger rig that came through the original Twist. So we get a bit of fun exposition as David goes through the process of building a handheld Twistor. As he's doing this, Melissa has been befriending an inquisitive member of the local wildlife, and they learn that they are still in the general location as their native Earth, so that the Twistor allowed David to see into the university, allowing for differences in elevation between the two universes, that is, which provided a bit of fun as David tries to find ways of getting to areas of the university that were out of reach of local hills or trees. The confusion that David's raids on the university's stock of batteries also provides a bit of fun until things get serious back in the home timeline with Vicky's kidnapping. By now, David has also managed to make verbal contact with Paul and Flash. That's Vicky's distraught brother. This news causes David to go rushing through the wilderness of his universe as he searches out the house where Vicky is being held, now being threatened with the same drug that had destroyed Alan Saxon's mind. This does have an air of suspense, but things go our hero's way fairly straightforwardly, with Vicky guiding the now mindless Alan Saxon out of captivity and into a race across the nearby lake as they're chased by the final member of the gang. As David is given heavier duty batteries and finally a generator, he's able to build bigger Twistors until they can finally use it to get home, to the delight of both of Paul, Elizabeth and the children, not to mention David and Victoria. We don't get to see if David and Victoria get together on a more permanent basis, or even if Vicky gets her PhD, though it would be a crime if she didn't, after all she's managed. Although some of the action scenes come out as a bit clunky, the overall story is reasonably intriguing, and I do mostly like the scenes of William's hacking skills, though technology has left a lot of his solutions being superseded. Overall, the book is a fun read, and if the ending is a bit rushed, it's satisfactory. Though there's a fair bit of luck involved with what David was able to do whilst stuck in the alternate Earth. As a point of interest, Professor Cramer is Professor of Physics at the University of Seattle, where the action of this story is set. And as well as being an academic, Professor Cramer also does bi-monthly factual science pieces for analog science fiction and fantasy. Anyway, if you've made it this far and think this may be a story you want to read in full, please click on either of the Amazon affiliate links in the description below. And although I do get a small fee from any purchases made, this won't affect what you pay. For now though, thanks for watching, and click the like button if you did like the video, and the dislike button if you didn't, and say why not in the comments. If you've read the book and liked it, let me know. Let me know why in the comments as well. Thank you and goodbye.